Today on Doomed! Today on Doomed! The New York primary election inches closer and closer. And on today's episode of Doomed, we talk with two progressive challengers for U.S. Congress who are taking on the Queen's Democratic Party machine head on. Mel Gagarin and Shaniyat Chowdhury joins me on today's show to talk about their campaigns and, what life is like campaigning, running during a pandemic. That and much, much more coming up right now. I'll bring them up on the program right now. Let me pull them up on the feed. La 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 la. Here we go. Mel and Shaniyat, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm looking forward to it.
Now, Mel, did I get your name right? Your last name? I tried so hard to make sure I got that right.
Yeah.
Nice.
You got all 17 letters correct.
Now, fellas, let's talk about this first because I've had some primary challengers on this show so far already. For example, just yesterday, Lauren Ashcraft was telling me about her New York 1 debate with Carolyn Maloney. So I need to know, Gregory Meeks, Grace Meng, how have your debates with them gone?
Man, I wish we had one. I mean,
Sean, do you wanna take this one off?
Yeah, sure. We did everything in our power to make sure that voters had the option of knowing who the representatives are and the plans that they want to put out for the district. We emailed their team numerous times. I even marched with Gregory Meeks for a Black Lives Matter protest in the Rockaways, right next to him. And after the protest, it was a march, and afterwards, I went up to him where I respectfully asked, hey, what can we do to get this going? And obviously, he gave me a politician answer. It was like, just talk to my staff. Emailed his staff again for the third time, no response. And we decided that, you know what, we're going to go forward with this. And we had our endorsers, we had other independent groups set up a debate, and we were waiting for his response, and he never showed up. We had almost 200 viewers on Facebook Live, and it was just, I was debating an empty chair. So I think it's safe to say that we won that debate.
And for people who don't know, Gregory Meeks is literally the Democratic Party king of Queens. He is the head of the Queen's Democratic Party machine. So, I mean, the fact that he wouldn't even show up and debate you, I mean, to me, that seems like a very poor example to set for every other Democratic candidate or representative or elected official in the entire borough.
Yeah. Well, Representative Meng is following his lead. We've made efforts to have a debate. We spent the past 2 weeks, publicly asking for a debate. We think it's the right thing for the constituency. Yesterday we had a volunteer that let us know last minute that the representative was going to be in my neighborhood, and asked about a debate, and her staffer Devin Willspeak was like, no one's reached out to the campaign. They never asked us about a debate. So, we happen to be in the neighborhood and figured, let's just make sure that there's no, the things aren't getting lost over email or the internet, because I can't imagine that they're not looking at their Twitter account, even though they respond to everything we do right quick. So our campaign manager went over and, asked about this, and he was like, oh, well, can you have an independent, journalistic moderator? We're like, well, you're in luck because we already asked Maya Kaufman if she'd be willing to moderate, and she agreed. So, we'll connect you over email. Let's get this going. And lo and behold, we're still waiting for that reply. We know there's another community group that has reached out to her office and is moving full steam ahead with getting a debate going, and she refuses to answer their emails either. So, I don't get it. I mean, if you're a sitting member of Congress, you're proud of the work that you've done. You have all these amazing ads telling everybody how responsive you are to the community and what a great job you're doing. Let's let them know right before the election. Let's hear all the great things that you've done. Defend your record. If you're proud of the work that you've done, I don't see why you're not willing to engage in a debate with primary challengers. So we'll see what happens. We're only 4 days away from the election. Maybe they'll do it at midnight on Monday.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is stunning that Jamal Bowman got a debate with Engel. Lindsay Boylan got a debate with Boyden. Thank you. Sorry. She actually was supposed to be on the show yesterday, but had something come up, so I'm gonna have to reschedule. And by then, I'll get her name right. She got her her debate with Nadler. So the fact that Meng and Meeks won't debate you guys is stunning because there's no reason for it. I mean, really, there's absolutely zero reason for it.
Well, there is a reason. It's because we know their track record and they're afraid to be embarrassed. We know that they've never been publicly criticized by any other candidate. And I think that it would have been a good opportunity to really show their true colors. I think, unfortunately, a lot of constituents just don't know how corrupt our opponents are. So, and I think that it would have been a good opportunity for a lot of people to see that. So there is a reason. It's their reason, but it's unfortunate that they won't come sit at the table with us just to talk about ideas. But politics as usual, huh?
Right. Earlier in the week, I had Mumita Ahmed on the show, and she's running for district leader in Queens. She's a Queens activist. I think everyone in Queens knows who she is. And we got into a really because I'm in Queens as well. In fact, Mel, if you defeat Grace Meng, I will be your constituent. So.
Oh, hell yeah.
So
awesome.
So buddy, you're gonna hear from me a lot. Prepare for it.
Good.
So I was talking with her, and we got this whole discussion about the broader Queens Democratic Party, and all those other all those other incumbents I just mentioned are in Manhattan, are in the Bronx. Yet the two incumbents in Queens are the ones who aren't doing this. What is it about the Queens Democratic Party? It really does seem like there's like a mafioso type aura around it that even like Manhattan and the Bronx and dare I say maybe even Brooklyn doesn't have. What's the deal with Queens?
I think Mel,
we're
for that.
Yeah. I mean, we have one of the oldest machines that still survives and still has, power through the Democratic clubs and control over the district leaders, and it exercises that power to protect their incumbents for better or for worse. The Bronx and Brooklyn have very formidable machines, but over the years, reformers have chipped away at it, and you have those counties have a more open democratic process, whereas Queens. It's very insular, and it's very selective, and they protect their own.
Right. So, how important would you say then was AOC's win just 2 years ago? I mean, that seems to be what has inspired. I mean, not just people in Queens, but all across the country. But I mean, especially for someone to finally chip away at that Queens Democratic machine.
Yeah, I think it was a collective effort. I think that when we look and we talk about the not me, us movement, it really has boiled down to the community just saying enough is enough. And for so long, and Mel knows this, he's been around for a while in this game, so he's played with all dirty politicians because they've come at him before. And we know that what they do is try to instill fear in everyday working people. Because the moment we grab a hold of their power will be gone. So, her win was definitely a momentum shift towards working class representation. We know that, the impossible is now possible. So, yeah, it's encouraged a lot of people from Congress all the way down to district leader to, you know what, we could definitely chip away at the system. And we know this system is dying out. This machine is dying out. They're on the last legs. So I think that 2020 going forward, that this machine is going to completely be dismantled. So I'm looking forward to it.
Right. So Mel, let's start with you. Say I'm someone who is in New York 6, where you're running. First of all, why don't you tell everyone who's listening what neighborhoods and what areas of the city are in New York Congressional District 6?
Yeah, so NY-6 is pretty much the heart of Queens, right? Central and Northeast Queens. We go as far west as Bayside, or Ridgewood, rather, Maspeth, Middle Village. We have, Regal Park, Kew Gardens, Forest Hills in the heart, Flushing up north, a little bit of Jamaica, South Richmond Hill in the south, and we go all the way east to Bayside, Auburndale. So yeah, it's a big chunk of Queens.
Right, and I think it's one of those rare New York City congressional districts that's entirely inside one borough.
Yep, 100% Queens.
Right. Where does yours extend to, Shaniyat? Just so we have this. Where's New York 5? What is in New York 5?
So I'm actually next door to Mel. I have the other half of Jamaica, and we go as far down south as the Rockaways, and we have parts of Nassau County, Long Island that include Elmont and Valley Stream. So it's weird because, we've talked to a lot of voters out in Nassau County. They were like, they had no idea they were even part of this whole one district of Queens. So it is pretty weird.
Right. I mean, it is odd, but honestly, I was looking at some of these gerrymandered districts in New York City, and some of them are like Nadler especially is insane. His district, it's like this weird, like at least like New York 5 and 6 seem to like encompass like a chunk of something that's all connected somehow. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So let's start with you, Mel. So say I'm someone just listening, just discovering that, oh wow, I'm in New York 6 and I could possibly vote for Mel, or maybe I want to vote for Grace Meng. Tell us about you. Why are you running? And a little bit of your background.
Sure. So, look, I'm running because we're living in the most dangerous moment in American history, and our leadership has failed us. And what we need are not politicians to get us through this moment. It's folks with the lived and professional experience to be able to navigate the very challenging waters of everything that we're facing right now. I was born and raised in this district. I grew up in a one-bedroom apartment raised by my mom and my abuela in Elmhurst. My mom was a nurse who worked nights up until she retired 3 years ago. My father's an immigrant from the Philippines. I worked my way up, did all the right things. Yet, despite all of that, still found myself, facing the challenges that a lot of people in the middle class and working class find themselves facing now. I worked for a state senator for a bit. I worked for a U.S. congressman that actually covered parts of this area. And then, I ran for city council in 2009. And in those days, I wanted to be in politics, but, kind of seeing the way it really worked really discouraged me. And I was like, you know what? I care about issues. I'm going to go work on that. I worked for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund for a few years, Planned Parenthood in New York City, and then at a nonprofit at the intersection of criminal justice reform, women's rights, and access to higher education. And so, it's always been about advancing racial, social, and economic justice for me. And, I was spending time being a stay-at-home dad. I was a touring musician. We talked a little bit before we went on air about punk rock. I was doing that, finished my master's in public administration and public policy. And, the world started falling apart. 2018 was supposed to be the blue wave, and we got AOC, which is fantastic. And we got the squad, but, they're literally a handful of legislators in an institution that is resistant to change. A Democratic Party that is so inside of the Beltway and the bubble that they still think that they somehow can work with the president, right? I mean, that came out of Representative Meng's mouth in this past State of the Union, where there's this fantasy that you're going to work with the president. You look at what's happening right now on the streets, all of these folks that have woken up and are joining those of us in the progressive movement that have for so long been calling for police accountability and justice. Where was Representative Meng all of this time? I mean, Black Lives Matter starts in 2013, the very first year of her tenure in Congress. She was the only Democrat out of the New York City delegation to vote for the Thin Blue Line Act, which would have been an expansion of the death penalty, very pro law and order, pro police type of Democrat. And that's not what we need right now. I mean, it belies a misunderstanding of the demands that have been made by Black Americans for so long who have been crying for justice. And to, now just sign on to all of these criminal justice reform bills literally a couple of weeks ago, not only is it disingenuous, but like she's never led on these issues. She takes a ton of money from real estate, which is ravaging our communities with overdevelopment and pushing out immigrant communities. She takes money from the military-industrial complex. Voted against the Iran deal. Is one of those hawks that's dangerous in terms of what our foreign policy is doing. And healthcare, right? Even right now, in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, she's sending out mailers to people saying that she stands for healthcare for all. I co-sponsor Medicare for all, but I'm for healthcare for, and that's just, again, it's manufactured consultant speak to not take a firm position and say, I recognize the policy failures of the past 10 years. I recognize where the ACA fell short. I recognize now why compromise actually isn't possible with this Republican Party and corporate Democrats. And I'm taking a stand, and I'm going to fight for Medicare for all because I recognize that that's the most effective and efficient policy outcome to help the people of my district and the people of this country. So that, in a nutshell, I think, is the case I'm making to folks on the streets.
Right. And yesterday when I had Lauren Ashcraft on the show, we were discussing how the incumbent she's challenging. For example, Gregory Meeks, he's out there. I feel like he's someone who makes his name and face known out there. I'm not saying in his district per se. I'm just saying in general. If you're a Democrat, you know who Gregory Meeks is. But in the case with Ashcraft, I was telling her about how Maloney, like, she doesn't really, if you were to name like something she stands for, you can't really put a policy or even a democratic position to her, really. She's just like someone who's just always been there. And I sort of feel like, Grace Meng is my congressperson, my congresswoman. She's my representative. And honestly, if I tell people, oh yeah, I'm Grace Meng's my congresswoman, they're like, who? And I'm like, it's the district next to AOC. And they're like, oh, okay. It's like, literally, how long has she been there, and how long has Ocasio-Cortez been there? And Meng is like a name that's just unknown, and I think that's because she doesn't do anything to put any sort of policy position or leadership out there, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And that's one of the things, like she likes to say that she's been leading on the environment. Well, all right. So you're a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal, which was, introduced by a freshman congressperson, right? AOC and Ed Markey introduced the Green New Deal, which is a framework. Within AOC's first term, she goes from Green New Deal to Green New Deal for public housing, which is an actual piece of policy. And it's like, where have you been, Representative Meng? Like, once the Green New Deal was introduced, why weren't you, rushing to put together your own policy packages that were going to enact the Green New Deal and make it a tangible plan and not just sort of a framework of goals? And so that, I don't think that that's lost on folks. We actually had a very interesting discussion with a community leader the other day on Twitter who felt we were unfair for calling out, the congresswoman for being absent. But the thing is, that's the truth. If you're not from certain parts of this district, if you don't, run within particular circles, she's not a presence that's known. And I can't tell you the number of constituents that we've spoken to who have actually reached out to her office and didn't feel like they were getting, the services they required. And, we were poking fun, obviously, and we put out the voice message that you would get when you called her office. And, in response now, if you go ahead, everybody, give it a call, and you'll get, an additional 10 or 20 seconds about how much she cares about constituent concerns before the original message continues. And now you get to wait a little bit extra longer before you can leave a message, if it even allows you to do that.
Right. I mean, sorry to get a little bit too NY-6 heavy here, Shaniyat, but I promise I'll get to you in a second.
Oh, good. I'm enjoying it. I enjoy when Mel talks because I just want to fight with him.
So,
I get excited. It's all good.
I saw Grace Meng put out a photo the other day where she was handing out face masks on Bell Boulevard in Bayside. And I mean, I can tell you, as someone who's I've lived in this district, or just literally in a neighborhood that's part of it, but just outside the district, for my entire life as well. This has been where I've lived: Flushing, Auburndale, Bayside, the general areas where I've always lived all 33 years of my life. And I can tell you right now, I have never seen any congressperson, let alone Grace Meng, in that area of the district before. And I mean, I got to tell you, it's not surprising to me that picture went up when she has a challenger for the first time ever.
Yeah, look, it's part of the disingenuous sort of politicking that I think helped get us to something like Trump, right? Where I think the American populace got sort of used to these sort of feel-good images and enough to make you think they're doing something for me, but their records don't show that. And look, all power to you that you had all of this PPE stored, and you can go around the district making photos in Jamaica and Elmhurst and making all these deliveries. But look, I've seen community leaders, Mumita, right? I mean, she was leading a great mutual aid effort in Southeast Queens. Anyone can do that. What we need from you as an elected official is so that that never has to happen in the first place, right? So that when the crisis hits, right, that was never going to be a necessity. That our healthcare workers weren't going to be in hefty bags. They weren't going to be, pleading for help from anyone who was willing to donate any type of PPE. So the pictures to me are meaningless, right? It's just the same thing with, she just released a great ad yesterday. And it's her at the foot of Queensborough Hall at a Black Lives Matter rally, and I put that in quotations mark because look, that was just a state legislature sponsored political rally. I was there. I was literally 2 feet next to her, and I walked away because that did. I've been to plenty of actions, and that to me didn't feel like a genuine action. It felt like it was an opportunity for Greg Meeks and for all of the politicians to show up and say Black Lives Matter, and she tweeted about it the next day and was like, "Oh, we were calling for justice." I'm like, "Who are you calling to? Who are you calling to? You are the elected. You are the ones that. What are you calling yourself?
Right.
You can't and it's time for people to wake up and start holding their electeds accountable. And I'm glad you said you'd be a pain in my ass if I get elected, because that's what I want, and that's what we need. We need our electeds to be held accountable. It's not enough to just show up at the picture. It's not enough to do the feel good video that's completely vapid and meaningless, right? Look, I'm glad that people like you. People like me too. I like her too. I think she's a great, nice person. She's a wonderful family. She has a beautiful family. I have no doubt that she is a sincere, genuinely nice person. But that's not what the job is.
Exactly.
That is not what the job is.
Right. Oh, for sure. Especially what you said about, especially everything, but what you said about that event. Listen, if a politician is tweeting out a flyer for a protest, that event was put together specifically for a reason. That's not something that no activist is putting together a flyer with the names of the elected officials who are showing up as if it's a punk rock show or something like that. I mean, and by the way, Mel, what band did you tour in? What band were you?
Scarborough, not the Joe Scarborough band, just Scarboro.
Okay. Just wanted to see if I heard. I've not, sadly. Punk rock.
Yeah, hardcore punk.
All right. I'll have to check it out.
Check it out. We're on Spotify.
Cool. So, Shaniyat, let's talk about you. Give us a little bit of background. Why are you running? And yeah, just feel free to take as much time as you want.
For sure. So, I'm a product of public housing and public education, and I just believe that New York 5 deserves to be champion with working class representation. In fact, I currently live in public housing, so I'd be the first person coming straight out of public housing from the streets of the hood to represent the working class people in the halls of Congress. And I think that's what we need. I think Mel speaks to that, how we just need working class representatives who are currently living the struggles because they know firsthand what it's like. And, I come from a Bangladeshi immigrant family. My father came here shortly after the Liberation War. He waited tables. My mother cleaned hotel rooms to help make ends meet. And we bounced around a lot because of financial insecurity. It's what almost every immigrant family had to deal with. And after 9/11 happened, that's when I realized at a young age that racism in this country, it's so entrenched in its history. And we're seeing that today. And having lost our home to a financial crisis, which both, I don't think Meng was in office yet, but Meeks definitely, he bailed out Wall Street. He was a big part of that because he is a corporate Democrat. And, after we lost our home foreclosure, we pretty much started out new. And I'm the eldest of three, so I had this unwritten obligation to help support my family. I had to go to college or get a job, and I didn't really have a lot of options. So I was stuck with enlisting in the United States military. I was poverty drafted because I needed access to housing, education, healthcare, everything that should be accessible for your regular people. It's coming at the expense of signing my life away for an imperial capitalist agenda. And what I learned over time, though, throughout my 6 years in the Marines, is that this tends to happen to a lot of poor children of color, that they're being recruited to fight all these unjust wars. And we're seeing how the last 20 years we spent almost $6 trillion, but we can't afford to eliminate student debt, which is at $1.6 trillion. We can't have healthcare for all in the richest country in the world, but yet we have some of the lowest quality of healthcare. And I think that's just unconscionable to think that these are the only options that our children have. So I believe that, over time, I got into organizing around climate change after Hurricane Sandy. The Rockaways was hit really hard after that. And then I got into organizing for tenant rights, and I decided that after 2016, this is all happening at the weird time. I was transitioning out the military. I was getting ready to graduate college. Trump was coming into office. It was such a weird time in my life that I decided, you know what, I need to do more than just organize. I wanted to break barriers at this point. And then Alexandria came around. I volunteered for her campaign, became one of her staffers. And, she definitely did open up the floodgates, but it wasn't until I went down to Tijuana, Mexico. I was advocating for immigrant rights for a lot of asylum seekers who were stuck at the border. And when I came back, I asked my representative, Gregory Meeks, like, hey, you represent a district that is 70% immigrants. It is over-policed by ICE. What can you do? Have a strong stance, right? And the crazy thing is he sits on the Foreign Affairs Committee. So he does have some say, and he's a senior member of it. So I'm like, what can you do? And he was like, we need to create more bed space for asylum seekers in detention centers. These detention centers were essentially like prison, right? Families are being torn apart, kids are being thrown in cages. And to hear that answer from my representative was just so underwhelming that I decided, you know what, that I just had enough. And I feel like that tends to be the case where a lot of people in New York 5, and I can say that throughout New York politics in general, a lot of people are desensitized to politics because it just hasn't worked for us. That's why we have low voter turnouts. That's why we have voter suppression, because people just don't want to vote because they hate their politicians. They hate what they're, bring them to the table because it's not representing their agenda. It's not a working class agenda. So I decided, you know what, I was about to become a teacher. I decided instead of becoming a teacher, I had to give this a shot. I didn't even know what could happen because I wanted to challenge the system. And this is more than about challenging any incumbent. It's about dismantling the system that they enable at the end of the day. Because this fight goes way beyond Greg Meeks or Grace Meng, but we know that there's fight. We have a fight against Blackstone, we have a fight against Trump and Mitch McConnell, all these private industries that are coming in who are looking to profiteer off of our labor, off of the working class people. So I hope that I'm looking forward to working with Mel beyond 2020 because there's a lot of things that needs to be talked about. When you look at the injustices of the coronavirus pandemic. Him and I were out there. We were doing the jobs of our representatives for them. In short term, we were delivering groceries and making sure our families are okay. But as campaigns, that should, it's great that we're looking out for our people, but that's the job of representatives, and they were absent. It wasn't up until 3 weeks ago that Greg Meeks finally sent out a wellness text to his constituents. 3 weeks ago, and we've been in this pandemic for the last 3 months.
Right.
So, I feel like, we did everything in our power to make sure our people, our communities were okay. But these are short-term solutions. We do need healthcare for all because millions of people who lost their jobs relied on job-based insurance. All of that's gone. We need universal basic income, universal paid sick leave. All these things should be essential so that way working families are protected and not the billionaires who have been making billions of dollars during this pandemic. So, I'm up there with Mel. I'm just sick and tired of the status quo. I'm done with it. So here we are. I'm looking forward to Tuesday.
Right. Now, I want people to understand, just we're talking about two Democratic incumbents here, but Meeks is the establishment. He is. How long has he been in office?
I was 5 years old at the time he became a Congress member. So 22 years.
Jeez.
I'm now 28. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that is unbelievable. I mean, I don't know. I know there's arguments for and against, but the idea that someone, term limits, but the idea that someone could do this for 22 years is just.
The crazy thing was he was a representative before gerrymandering in 2010. He was the representative for New York 6.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That is, and
there's some shared history.
And with Meeks specifically, I mean, this is someone who is one of the Democratic Party, not just in Queens, like he is the actual Democratic Party leader of Queens, the Queens Democratic Party, but the entire Democratic Party, if you were to put like a leadership like lineup, he's one of the people up there because obviously his seniority and everything. And like, listen, I understand that no one politician alone can snap their fingers and make something happen. But one thing any lone politician has that I don't see any of these people using, Meng included, is the power of the bully pulpit. And I think, the best example for at least recent times is Bill de Blasio. Now, here's a guy who came out as this great big progressive, wanted to do so much, get so much stuff done, and a lot of progressives view him as a disappointment. I mean, right now he's getting tons of well-deserved shit. But listen, like here's right. I mean, I don't even think tons of well-deserved shit even really encapsulates how much shit he's getting right now. But here's the deal: like, if he can't actually, let's use this as an example, do something about the police. If he actually can't, if the system is so entrenched. I mean, if you ask me, his daughter wasn't arrested at a protest just by chance. I'll tell you. I mean, that wasn't a quinky dink. But why not then use the bully pulpit and say, listen, I came into this office because I wanted to do things. But shit is so messed up that even I, the mayor of New York City, don't have the power to do it, and just run down why he can't and who's stopping him. I mean, put these people on blast, put these these powers on blast, but he just doesn't do that. He'd rather just line up behind the police and say, oh, they did nothing wrong. And this obviously is just an example that I can use for Meng, for Meeks. I know there's certain things they don't want to do, but for the things they claim they want to do, why aren't they out there talking about why they can't get them done to force people's hands to actually get them done?
Look, I mean, I think that for Representative Meng is because, like, she is a career politician, right? I mean, she likes in her bio that she's been telling folks recently, it's, this wonderful story about how, she comes from an immigrant family and she didn't know anything about politics and, became the congresswoman. And it's like, whoa, let's reverse that. Let's not pretend that your father wasn't an assemblyman, that you had access to a political network, that made it easier for you to challenge, the sitting assembly person that replaced her dad. And, and then, that, as far as I know, that's been the majority of her career. I know that she was an attorney for a little bit of time before that. She's not much older than me. While I was out there, working on all these other causes, she's been in elected office. And I think once you get there, you get comfortable. You go with leadership unless you buck them to vote with Republicans, and then you try to lay low and hope that you get reelected the next time around. And this is why primary challenges are important. Because it forces you all of a sudden to have to do your job, and it forces you to have to lead. And it's a shame, because I feel, having worked in the state senate and having worked in Albany, or for a congressperson, you see the differences in how those offices and those institutions operate. And she very much operates in Congress as if she were still in Albany, where, the leadership sort of lays out what the plan's going to be, and you kind of just go along with it and you play for the team. And look, I'm not afraid to say this. I'm not a party guy. I'm not really interested in the agenda of the Democratic Party. There's no other game in town, and I have a D next to my name. But people need to start looking at what we stand for, because to be a Democrat is essentially meaningless these days. If you're taking thousands and thousands or even millions of dollars from corporate PACs, if you're doing the bidding of the corporate interest, which we used to associate with the Republicans, then what does it mean anymore? I think it's more important that you're fighting for your community, that you're fighting for these issues, and that, that at some point in the future, somebody else comes along and takes us out. And that's what would make this democracy healthy. I don't know necessarily about, term limits in specific, because there's a lot of pros and cons to that. But I think that, we need a more engaged populace, and we need less politics and more, putting people first and policy-oriented policy makers.
All right. Now, I know you both mentioned, running during the coronavirus and what your work with your who would be your constituents in your district. I would like to actually go a little bit more into that, because I think, you two and all the people who are running this year are really doing something that, I mean, hopefully won't happen ever again. But this is a once in a lifetime thing right now, where you're running a political campaign as an insurgent progressive. Obviously, it's very important for a campaign like that to have a grassroots organization, and usually that entails knocking on doors, feet on the ground. How have you? And this question's for both of you. When one goes, I want to hear from the other right after. How have both of you, had reconfigured your campaign to run during a pandemic?
I think it's because we're organizers first and, politicians last. Because, your everyday politicians, they're so bought out. They're part of status quo. They listen to our consulting firms. I'm sure Mel could attest to this, but both of our opponents have millions of dollars, and they put out the shittiest mailers. Oh my God. But that's a story for another day. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that, they've been in office for so long, they just don't know how to organize. And I think that what we need in office is less politicians and more organizers and activists. So a lot of us really recognized the issue immediately when coronavirus happened. We just suspended our petition. Mel, he led the way to suspend the petitioning process and really help a lot of candidates get on the ballot. And then what we did was turn our campaign into organizing efforts to make sure that families through our districts had basic needs of groceries, make sure they had medicine, doing wellness checks. We did that shit right away from the get-go because we just knew it was just the right thing to do, right? We put our campaigns aside because we were like, the needs of the people is greater than politics. So we made sure that they were okay. We did everything we could, even with all the little money that we had, all the little resources we did have around us. We did everything in our power to make sure that our people were okay. And then, switching digitally, it's so great to be in 2020 and have technology in a time like this, because it would have been a lot harder without it, right? I think that doing texting, phone banking really help us stay in contact with a lot of people. And even now, we still follow up on people, making sure that they're okay. Even if we deliver groceries to them like 2 months ago, we're like, all right, we just build that kind of relationship. And that's the kind of politics that we really want to bring forward. It's that kind of the politics that we are, it's within our values. It's just reflected with the work that we've done. So I'm proud of how we did it, and I think that 2020 has just been a crazy year, but this is something to remember for the rest of our lives.
I had to, you mentioned the flyer, so I had to quickly reach off screen here and find my mail, because I had actually just received a flyer from Grace Meng. And,
so cringy.
It says, fighting for working families. Now, what does that mean, fighting for working families? And some of the bullet points here is created a small business development center in Queens. I don't know anybody who knows what that is.
Sure. Okay.
Is fighting for more robust paid family leave and sick time. Okay. Supports a $15 minimum wage. That sounds very, I mean, the first one is fighting for more robust paid family leave. Okay, fighting, I get it. But supports a $15 minimum wage. It's sort of just like, I'll stand back, and if it happens, it happens.
I'm not against it.
Right. And is pushing legislation to expand worker protections. I mean, honestly, there's only one, and this is because she's my congresswoman, there's only one thing that she put forward that I can name off the top of my head that is like a Grace Meng original that I was like, oh, that is a good idea. Surprising to see this come out from my congresswoman. And that was, she was like the leader in trying to get this new bill through where the voting age would be lowered to 16. I mean, that is a good bill. Yes, great. But I mean, everything else, I mean, come on, what's going on here?
Yeah, and look, and we always had a joke, which is like, if you like Grace Meng, you're gonna love me, because the things like that, like that 16-year-old voting age, that's not gonna go away. We'll continue to champion that. But we're actually not gonna just use like political jargon and sort of like double speak. Because that's what a lot of that is. Like, I support a $15 minimum wage. Well, like, welcome to like 4 years ago.
Right. I mean, it should be higher now. Even I even sort of.
That's my point.
Right.
Like, I find, like, and I had all the progressive groups and like the unions that ask you this question, like, do you support the fight for 15? I'm like, yes, and what I actually think we need to do is change the federal minimum wage so that it's matched the regional cost of living and inflation. Because $15 an hour in New York is not $15 an hour in like Muncie, Indiana. You can go a lot farther with $15 in Muncie than you're going to go here in Queens. So like, this is the thing, like the goalposts are always going to be changing. The policy landscape changes. And so like to like all of a sudden grasp onto something like, what are you gonna do? That doesn't do anything. Like you also proposed using PPP money to help landlords and condo owners, and it's like that's not it. It's the Paycheck Protection Program. Like that's not the first thing. Luckily, AOC had was suggesting a separate fund to help renters, and she hopped onto that because like now all of a sudden she's trying to tack to the left on all of these things, but. This is where I think people have gotten disillusioned because how many mailers have people gotten over the years that I'm fighting, but I'm not delivering. Like what is the delivery? Like what is a small business center going to do to somebody that's about to lose their business because they've been shuttered for the past 3 months?
And what's the most ironic thing about these flyers is that they've been representatives of our districts for so long that they still need to introduce themselves as to who they are. That says a lot. Right. The fact that you have to reintroduce yourself on a flyer on a district that you've been representing for so long says that you've been absent. That a lot of people just don't know who you are, and I think that's just a testament of just how much they just care more about power than actual policy changing.
Right. I mean, another thing actually is like the flyer supports $15 minimum wage, but I mean. That's nice if you're running maybe somewhere else, but it sort of disconnects. Why are you telling people who live in a city where actually $15 minimum wage is the law? I mean, what are you like? Yeah, okay.
That's why.
We got that here. I mean, that's nice. Okay.
Look, she in 2018, when you look at her vote record, right, and we have like a nice little graphic because people only like to consume images, where she's to the right of Engel, right? The only one that was more conservative than her in Congress in 2018 was Joe Crowley, and he is, off on K Street now. Hopefully you'll be joining him soon, but that's kind of the sort of cynicism that exists. So it's tragic. It's tragic that this is what we constantly have to fight against.
I don't think actually that I've made that a point enough here with Joe Crowley, and I want to drive this home to people. Grace Meng is someone who was basically brought like taken under Joe Crowley's wing. Like Joe Crowley is behind a lot of where she rose up through the party ranks. Really, I mean, she was practically his like. Yeah, go ahead.
Look, if you go to the county organization in Forest Hills, if you're lucky enough to get into those offices and you look at all the posters, they're right next to each other. That's no coincidence. That's no coincidence. I mean, she was handpicked by Joe Crowley to fill that seat. So any inclination that she is anything but, she likes to say she's an outsider, and it's like, who are you fooling? Like anyone that knows who you are and like knows you're anything but, you try to pass yourself off as a progressive, and it's like, but why? You've built your record on, like at the beginning of this year, I think it was City and State had her as she's perfectly comfortable in the center. She does all this bipartisan stuff. Again, she's the only Democrat from the New York City delegation to vote for the Thin Blue Line Act, right? And now all of a sudden it's 2020. You got a progressive challenger, and now you found your Noam Chomsky book under the bed, I guess. I mean, I don't get it, which is like, just defend your record. That's all I'm saying. It's like, if you want to be a centrist and you want to say that we can't have Medicare for all and make an argument for it, let's have that debate. Well, that would require showing up for a debate. So I guess that's how we get stuck.
Right.
Anyway.
I mean, off the top of my head, I'm just remembering actually, specifically something she did over a couple of years ago during the Trump era. Really, sort of, I actually even tweeted at her where she crossed party lines and wrote like a joint bill with a Republican. I can't remember who, and it was to get more money to the far right wing government of Netanyahu's Israel. I mean, it was. I mean, it's really like, why are you doing that? What's the point? You're a congresswoman from Queens. Why do you need to? You don't need to do that. Like that's where you're gonna like.
New York 6 is a safely blue district. And, it always baffles my mind when she takes these sort of far right approaches. I mean, even in the midst of this election, and the coronavirus made it easy to slip by, but she partnered with Joe Wilson, who, mainstream Democrats will remember as the guy who yelled, "You lie" to Obama in the middle of the State of the Union address, to deploy the Iron Dome to Iran to protect our troops in Iraq. You know how to protect our troops in Iraq? Bring them home. Bring them home.
Right.
And it's no small surprise that Raytheon also makes the missile system and is also one of her biggest donors. So, like,
And Gregory Meeks, we are not forgetting you. If it wasn't for AOC defeating Joe Crowley, Gregory Meeks wouldn't be the head of the Queens Democratic Party right now.
I actually have a funny story about that. I actually know his son-in-law, and he's a chief of staff for another representative in the Bronx. And I remember he texted me one day. He was like, and this is before I was thinking about running. He was like, "So, what do you think about Gregory Meeks becoming the Queens County chair?" I told him honestly, it's a lot of people wouldn't care, And the truth is like a lot of people don't care. A lot of people don't care because he has two hats. He has multiple hats. He's not only the Congress member, but he's also a district leader, and now he's also the Queens County chair. But we know it goes way beyond that. Because this system, this party in itself, has been operating on foreclosing homes and businesses on working families throughout the borough of Queens, because it's being operated by 3 real estate attorneys who are from Long Island, and because of that, we have some of the highest rates of home foreclosures in New York State. It's wild to think that, because it's one, he's taking money from groups like Blackstone and KK and all these private equity firms and all these big banks. The same banks, private equity firms, are funneling money that give money to these real estate attorneys. It's the same group of people, because it's how they make their profits, right? And so I think that says a lot. Where even Meeks himself, he also has written bipartisan legislation to repeal Dodd-Frank, to really give the big banks all the power in the world to impose all these unlimited amounts of interest rates on families who can't afford to keep their homes. But what can working families? What can they do? They have no choice but to take out these loans. They need a roof over their head. So I think that because of how much big money plays into our politics, it's really hurt all of us. And I think that when you displace working families, you take their power away. Not only are you taking away their homes, but you're taking their power away to even vote within the district. Because now they don't even have an option to vote for representatives who will look out for them. So this fight, again, I mentioned it earlier, it goes way beyond Meeks or Meng, but it really goes on to try and dismantle the system that they both enable.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up those 3 lawyers, because I was talking about this with Mumita earlier in the week on the show, and it is stunning to me that this is this honestly sounds like something you would see on in some sort of investigation discovery type, like conspiracy type TV show or something, where every episode some new crazy thing that happens and you didn't even know this was going on. The idea, and to me the craziest part, is that if you die in the borough of Queens and you have no next of kin, these 3 lawyers get all your money and everything you own.
Yep.
They
made millions off of it.
What kind of racket is that? How is that even legal? And these are the 3 guys that are practically, shadow running basically the Queens Democratic Party. It's like, how does this go on? I mean, I feel like it's crazy that there hasn't been some sort of, big documentary on Netflix about these 3 guys, because it's something that would do really well, because it's so scandalous. It's incredible it's still going on.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So what I was going to say next is, so this might not pertain to you guys, because it seems like your 2 opponents are treating you a little bit differently than others. But others have told me about how, I brought up Lauren Ashcraft before, so let me bring her up again. One of the attacks that they're spreading on her is that she comes from the financial sector. And I asked her, oh wow, how long? You were some big wig Wall Streeter or something? and she was a project manager at a bank for a year. That's their big attack on her. I mean, scandalous, I know. Just like those 3 real estate guys who take everyone's money if they die without any family, right? So, what have you guys had to deal with any of that crap? What has been like the if it has happened? What has been like the most ridiculous thing that you've received blowback for?
I was actually telling this to someone on the interview earlier today, but the most ridiculous thing that they've been attacking me on, and it's like just personal attacks, that I moved into the district. I moved into the projects, right? I moved into public housing to run for public office. Mind you, I moved into Jamaica at 14 years old because my family lost our home to foreclosure by the same system that my opponent had bailed out. I was 14 years old. Magically, somehow, I decided at the age of 14 I wanted to become a Congress member one day. I didn't even know who Meeks was at the time. And they've been personally attacking me, saying I'm not from the community when I've been working in my community for the last 3 years.
I bet that foreclosure was to pad your resume too, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It was all planned out that way, right?
So street cred.
Yeah.
That's actually very reminiscent of that ad that what was it, like the Democratic majority for Israel or something started running against Jamal Bowman, where apparently he owed something like $2,000 in back taxes or something, which he didn't even, and they ran an ad about this. He didn't even know about it. He found out from the ad, and he was like, oh, and he paid it off.
Thanks.
I mean, yeah.
Oh man, but it's so lame. It's like, these are these tactics, right? Where it's just like, did you know that being working class is actually pretty hard? That's essentially what I got out of it. I'm like, so what? I know so many people that are behind on their taxes because they had to buy groceries. And they're desperate out in to try to keep that seat safe. But go Jamal.
Right. So Mel, have you received any attacks for being a punk rocker?
No, I just get I get the socialist hit. Somebody tried to throw that in my face once, and I'm like, yeah, I've been in a bunch of working class neighborhoods throughout the country and got to interact with Trump's America and understand the challenges of bridging the gap and recognizing that we can raise social consciousness in these folks, and it's something that I had to do to essentially survive being out on the road sometimes. So it's like, you got me. I don't know what to tell you. None of that shit bothers me really. You get so much ridiculous stuff. My favorite is just we love reading back the text that we get to see what's the most hateful thing or the most curses someone can fit in a sentence when they're trying to get under our skin. But it doesn't bother us much.
Right. So New York 6 is a district where I feel like it's in the middle of a real transition. I think it's a weird time for this specific district. The neighborhoods in it, you see if you look at Astoria or other areas of Queens, Sunnyside, Woodside, they've gone through a lot of young people there now. It's a very progressive district. A lot of people in those neighborhoods were able to vote for AOC. Whereas New York 6, you look at its makeup and you would think it's very progressive, but it's starting to transition. It's sort of in the middle right now where it really could go either way, where there's enough progressives where they could sway an election, but there's also enough old school Democrats where they could sway the election. What is your take on that for New York 6?
Yeah, I've been watching this district change over the past decade. I don't think a race like this would have been possible 10 years ago. And I think that we are at a turning point. I went to, so my high school did a protest a couple of weeks ago because it turned out that there was a bunch of these racist incidents that had gone unaddressed by the administration. And so we did a march and it then linked up with another BLM march in Forest Hills. And I was like, that sounds cool. It'll be a couple of folks and it'll be fine. And when we came down that street to merge with that other protest, I was flabbergasted because it was literally hundreds of people marching down the streets of Forest Hills. And you had, little old white ladies with canes next to, young folk. And I realized that I've been right, what I've been saying since the beginning of this campaign when everybody tried to come at me with like, well, isn't the district too conservative? Oh, it's too conservative. There isn't a progressive base. I'm like, you're wrong. Like I've been watching these neighborhoods change and you're right. The progressives can turn this race, but y'all got to come out, fill in those absentee ballots. And if you feel safe and are able to go out, early voting goes on until this Sunday. Go get out there and vote. And on Tuesday, get out and vote and get your neighbors to do it because the counter is true too, right? There are enough of those old school Dems that may not even know that Representative Meng has a challenger because that's what she's been trying to do is just kind of pretend that she's just running for re-election just because it's that time of year. But the only way that we're going to be able to move this ball forward is if we go out there and do the voting.
Right. And Shania, how has New York 5? What is your take on New York 5? I'm not obviously I live in New York 6, so I know it a little better. How is the ideological swing there? Is it becoming more progressive? I mean, I know you're it's a very diverse. Well, New York 6 is as well. These are literally probably two of the most diverse districts in the whole city. Really, I mean, it really is.
Yeah, New York 5 is really similar with New York 6 in terms of the turning point. I think that, not going to name names of organizations, but, they haven't really seen the. I see Mel smile because I know he knows what I'm talking about. But these, a lot of organizers, if you're not from these neighborhoods, you just wouldn't know, right? But you can't know unless you come out and organize around here. But we've been living in our communities for so long. We've seen the changes. We've seen how a lot of the shifts are changing, where a lot of the old guard, they are older. They necessarily don't have a lot of the same young energy to really mobilize people. It's changing. But I think as time changes, it's so important to stay relevant with the times and the issues. And I think that a lot of the young people who are coming up, we're heading to our 30s and 40s and so on, but we've come up with different values than our forefathers. So it's definitely shifting. I think it can go either way. But it's because our campaigns have done such a great job at tapping into voters who just never been reached out to, at least having candidates that really speak to the values. And we're seeing that for the first time that both our opponents have challengers where, our values and our campaigns are based on working class rights. And our districts are both working class. And I think that when we've been able to reach out to voters, they're like, you know what? I do have an option. It's nice to see that they have more than one option for the first time in a very long time. So there's pockets and enclaves of progressives throughout the borough of Queens, but it's just how well can a campaign or any candidate can do to really touch their hearts and their minds. So the shift and the potential is there, and I know that for years to come, it's going to be a great time for progressives.
Mel, Shaniyat, thank you both of you so much for joining me today. I want people to understand that even if they don't live in these two districts, there's many ways you can help Mel and Shaniyat with their campaign. And I want to give each of you the last word here to let people know where they can find you online, your websites, any last words you wanna put in there. Feel free. This is your open mic right now. Mel, why don't you go first?
Sure. So you can find us at melforprogress.com, all one word. If you put volunteer.melforprogress.com, that'll take you to a form. We could definitely use folks to help us make some phone calls and text banks in the final few days as we're trying to get everybody to go out there and vote. And the only closing statement I'll say is this: is that now more than ever, we really need real people that aren't politicians, that aren't beholden to parties, that are unbought. That are going to go in there and fight for the right things. I tell you what I stand for, whether it's popular or not. I tell you who I'm fighting for. You go to my policy page, you'll actually see real ideas. You go to Grace Meng's policy page, you see a lot of platitudes. And that's a problem. And that's the type of politics that we need to change. If you want to see elected leaders, if you want to see your government finally work for you, you're going to have to do a little bit of homework. And nobody likes to do homework. But look, we have to save this country because we really are at a tipping point right now.
Yeah. And just to add on to what Mel was saying, this goes way beyond, we know Trump is the biggest threat that we have, but this goes way beyond Trump, that we need to have actual vision of what we're going to do to really help our communities and move forward, right? So it's important to acknowledge that coming out of the coming out of this pandemic and all the racial injustices going on, we do need to have a serious conversation about about race in this country. We need to have a conversation about what reparations look like. What does Medicare for all look like? What does a universal basic income look like? To really help working families move forward, so that way we're protected. And I hope that a lot of viewers who are watching can really help both Mel and I out, because we do have 4 days left. So we need all the help we can get. Help us volunteer. From my website, you can visit us at Shan2020.com. That's SHAN2020.com. There's a volunteer link. There's also a donation link if you have the capacity to doing so. That would be also good if you can't volunteer. But let's make it happen. We're almost there, and I'm excited about what our future is looking like.
Mel Gagarin and Shaniyat Chowdhury, thanks so much for joining me tonight. Good luck to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care.
Cheers.
Good night.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the show. Oh, look at that. The green screen's not covering the entire screen. What's going on there? How'd that happen? There we go. Patreon.com/Matt Binder, folks. Somehow, I was like, oh, this week we'll do a bunch of shows, maybe gain a few extra patrons. The opposite happened. Lost a few. It happens. No big deal. But if you could use your help now more than ever to make sure we keep the momentum going and we don't fall back. Again, only if you can afford to do so. Patreon.com/Matt Binder. You can also find me on Twitter @Matt Binder. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Matt Binder. Instagram @Matt Binder. Any social media platform you could think of, just type in Matt Binder, search, you'll find me. What else? iTunes, Google Play, doomedpod.com for the podcast. What else? Oh, I forgot to mention yesterday, but I did, and I'll get the video and upload it. I gave testimony yesterday to New York State Attorney General Letitia James in the public hearing on police. What the police were doing at these protests. There was a hearing into the police behavior, and I was asked, if I wanted to give testimony because I had sent in some of my experience and some things that concerned me, and I gave the testimony, and I'll get the video of that and upload that, and maybe I'll attach it to a podcast next week. Folks, I will probably be doing 1, possibly 2 more of these primary shows before the New York primary on Tuesday. I am currently in talks to get a couple more great progressive challengers in New York to come on the show. This has been a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing these shows. And June 23rd. So far, we've talked to Mumita Ahmed, Lauren Ashcraft, Shaniyat Chowdhury, and Mel Gagarin. And gonna probably add a couple more to that lineup too. June 23rd, New York. If you got a absentee ballot, still time to send it in. Early voting is going on now. And, of course, you could go and vote June 23rd. I mean, New York has been slowly reopening. Monday, I believe they're planning on opening Phase 2. While the rest of the country is doing terrible right now and actually getting worse with the coronavirus pandemic, New York State, specifically even New York City, has really been taking this. I mean, we know how bad it could be, so we've been taking it very seriously. And we're at like record lows now of cases and deaths. So I think if you wear gloves or a face mask, or if not gloves, hand sanitizer, you wash your hands, you actually really, social distance, keep 6 feet away, be careful, you can safely go out and vote on June 23rd. And I feel comfortable saying that, unlike when there were primaries in March and April in like Michigan and Wisconsin, when this was all starting and that line was just going straight up. In New York, the opposite's happening. Everyone is taking great precaution. I would say that if you also do that, you can safely vote on Tuesday if you can't get out an early vote or you haven't received an absentee ballot. So, that is the show for today. More primary shows coming up. Next week, I will be on the Surfs. I'm also talking with another podcast to be on their show. I'll give you more information about that soon. And then also next week will be a Doomed episode that we will also have a Patreon half of the show because we'll be back to our normal schedule. And then once that normal schedule routine is back on, I will start planning out doing some of those watch party type episodes where we grab clips. If we can't find a movie, I'll grab some clips and we'll all watch that together and do some Mystery Science Theater 3000 type fun with that. All right, folks. See you all next time. Oh, wait, let me just make... Oh, what am I doing? Wait 1 second. One more second here. I want to make sure I'm not missing any super chats. It's fine. We do have a super chat. Where is it? Here we go. Renee, call in tomorrow to MR and talk to AOC. I don't think AOC is taking calls. Yeah, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will be on Majority Report with Sam Cedar tomorrow. I don't think she's gonna be there when they take calls. Are they? Is she? Is that the plan? Oh yeah. Also, if you want to see me on another person's YouTube channel or podcast, let them know. If you want to see me, them on this show, let me know. What else? Oh, the patrons. I'll give everyone a chance to reply to me about that Majority Report thing if they're taking calls with AOC tomorrow. I doubt that. But the people who make the show possible. Abigail T, Adam Q, Alan B, Andrew C, Andrew H, Angela, R.E.R., Baka, Ben, Benji, Bobby M, Brian S, Brosnan, Champagne Kami, Chris F, Christine H, Cindy G, Colin R, Connor R, CT, Cul-de-sac, Cyber Snowstorm, D, Dan K, Dank Uger, Dave K, David Z, Daya, Douglas V, Dragon Slayer, Eugene B, Fraz K, Free Hat, FTW, Graham C, Greywind, Greg D with 2 G's, Grim, Hitesh, Igor, Jack D, Jacob W, Jameson, Janelle A, Jasmine H, Jeremy M, JLS, John B, John S, Jonathan B, Joseph H, Joseph R, Joyce M, Justin S, Katie S, Kaushal, Kyle, Lisa D, Mariah, Mark S, Maddie J, Max W, me, Melissa M, Mitch V, Michael B, Michael J, Michael M, Mr. Dinks, NS, Nicole A, Namdenet, No Style, Odeth, Paul M, Penelope D, Custer, Rad Dad, Remy, Ryan, Scott R, Seth K, Sean H, Sheena A, Silicone Baby, Stephen R, Stephen S, Steve A, Tammy G, Hypervisor, This Is Not Pizza, Tina M, Tom M, Why That Tie Guy, Utopian, Zach M, and Zoe. Thanks so much, guys. Again, patreon.com/Matt Binder. If you could help us get back on that trajectory upwards with the Patreon subscribers, be greatly appreciated right now. Other than that, see you guys next time. Undoomed.